In 1981, a new disease was detected, and nobody knew what it was. And the first people who got it that were known about were gay. The disease was actually infecting more people than that, and this isn't something that's really being disputed anymore because so many people eventually disproved the need for AIDS to be caused by being gay. You're not allowed to discuss the subject without discussing the pushback. The moralization or demonization of disease is a chronic problem in society and culture. We're in the middle of a pandemic and people are demonizing the subject matter entirely. But in 1981, it was detected as attacking people who had no other illnesses, had no history of illnesses of any kind, and because of the upwards of 10-year incubation period, that means that this disease was attacking people and infecting people since 1970s. And because of what we know now, hindsight's 2020, or it tries to be, we know that this transferred as a disease type that was known zootonically under other animals. Again, we're in the middle of a crisis caused by a disease transferred from other animals that people are in denial of now. And I had, like a lot of you, bird flu. That's usually the normal flu. And I've had swine flu. This is not a new thing. So what's a person to do when they need to have search engine ranking by saying something contrarian like viruses don't exist? And why? What is the ulterior motive of denying AIDS or denying COVID-19 or denying swine flu or avian flu or cancer itself? Let's get on with it. 1982, acquired immune deficiency syndrome, or AIDS, was the name given to this instead of gay cancer or gay flu, because people wanted to make it about the first people who got sick, not the majority. And the majority of people who get sick, as you might have noticed, is everybody. And you're going to get people screaming at me in the comment section that only gay people get it and only devil worshippers get it or something else, because that is their ulterior motive. The ulterior motive, not arterial or venous motive here, is that they need to demonize a victim of a disease. They have to other people. If you have any genetic defect, you will be shunned by people who do that. Now, I have to point out that it's an evolutionary advantage to be a complete dickhead to anybody who gets sick, because you stay away from people who get sick. The thing is, nobody's intentionally getting a lethal disease. Nobody is intentionally trying to get sick from the pig flu or bird flu or bat flu. Oh, actually, we do have people doing that. We call them mask holes. They deliberately try to infect everybody else. And it's the same variety of asshole. No, I'm not going to be nice about this. People who deny medically established facts always have an ulterior motive, and it's always antagonistic, and it's always borderline murderous. I'm not going to be nice about this because I don't have to be. 1983, scientists discovered the virus that caused AIDS by isolating it. And there are people who will scream at the top of their lungs using 1850s logic, you can't confirm a virus exists because I said so. Because someone said so in the 1800s. Who then recanted because he realized viruses were a disease. And he contradicted you. But you ignore that. Because people who are denialists of reality have to lie. They have to claim that Darwin admitted on his deathbed there has to be a God when he didn't. They have to state that everything has to be the opposite of what we know because they have secret knowledge that they made up out of their butt. Anyway, after they discovered the virus, then they started trying to figure out how to kill it. They figured out it was a virus, obviously, but they wanted to figure out what kind. Then they started studying its structure, what the hell it does, testing at petri dishes, and then they started looking at antiretroviral medications. There's a lot of them because they were discovered originally to cure plant diseases. So we're not allowed to make our crops work. 1985, a company, Burroughs Wellcome, and then someone else grabbed a patent and sold it and bought it, for AZT. It was first described in 1964. It was a failed cancer drug from the 1960s, Zydozuvaline. Why would they use this cancer drug? Well, it wasn't cancer. It was an antiretroviral drug because they assumed all cancers are caused by viruses. They were wrong. Period. Full stop. Viruses cause cancers, but you have people saying, no, you can't get cancers from viruses, but you can only get it from funguses. Why do people deliberately lie, not make a mistake, lie about history, causes and effects for diseases? I'd like to remind you that Morgellons, the disease that's fake on the internet, has its history in an actual disease, unironically shoving it in your face how fake they are. Morgellons disease was based on an area that was analyzed for a particular medical problem that is the first example of a diagnosis of a medical problem and finding the causative agent or contagion, and that was scabies. So if you're going to call it Morgellons, you would have to call it based on it being an episode, an outbreak of scabies infection in France. But no, to be the ultimate and contrarian, misuse a word for something that isn't real even. Delusional parasitosis. Anyway, it was an attempt to cure cancer in the 1960s. And it was found to stop HIV from multiplying because it wasn't an anti-cancer drug. It was an antivirus drug. It was effective, somewhat. That's 1985. So from 1981 to 1985, 4 years passed before someone was able to do this. And it got fast-tracked for two reasons. One, it was a medication that was tested in the 1960s, so part of the testing had already been finished. The other reason was AIDS was multiplying because they didn't understand that it had a long incubation period. We now know that it can have a ridiculously long incubation period, during which you're infectious. And by the way, a lot of you are aware of asymptomatic carriers this year spreading diseases and causing spikes, even when you mask up and self-isolate 6 feet. So what do you do when we get knowledge like that? Ignore it and claim it's caused by 5G. Now, why am I bringing up this denialism? AIDS denial, COVID-19 denial, scabies denial. Well, they patented it. And the patent wore out in the year 2005. It became available, only became available in 1987, available to people. And many other drugs were passed after that point, most of which had lower or higher cost differences. But AZT and variations of it, most of them, 3 of them, became approved as expired patent generic versions in 2005. Not the current year. Now, what are you to do when you deal with something that's scary, gets in the news, talks about diseases happening to people, and originally only focused on one group you hate? I mean, God help them if they were black, homosexual, transgender feminists, then you'd be murdering them in the streets, wouldn't you? There's a specific variety of sadistic asshole out there. We call them Trump supporters sometimes, but that's not necessarily an accurate thing. It's actually mean. I mean, Nazis aren't that bad. I'm just joking. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't insult everybody who voted for Trump. That's bullshit. I mean, I've run into people like that, 1 in 500. The rest of the people who voted for Trump are just reasonable people who just didn't like Hillary. Well, suddenly it makes sense, doesn't it? Don't forget that. And just like this year, nobody really voted for Joe. They voted against Trump because they liked him less. But let's talk about what caused these bullshit stories about diseases, including the one we're dealing with now. 1, let's call it a deliberate lie about viruses, even though you'd have to get literally everybody in every country to agree with you doing this, knowing full well that any college-level student could do a simple scanning electron microscope test or some biology test and find out you faked it. They're all in on it. except that the methodology used to prove the virus doesn't exist is something that a college student could do, and they've never found that. What about the other motivations? Let's talk about motivations, but let's talk about that right now. You're selling snake oil, and your competitor is the real medical environment. People sell you bleach to drink. Literal bleach, literal paint thinner, literal snake oil, literal fire water, literal gasoline. No joke. Instead of medical treatments. They don't make you better off. They make you absolutely sick immediately. They'll give you bloody shits. And they won't cure your disease or help you in any way, but they keep selling it to you. Meanwhile, the medical community actually treats people. The claim will be made that cancer is caused by fungus when it's not, normally. It can be, but it's not normally that. Or viruses. Actually, that's not as common. And they'll claim that they have a treatment for it based on Ouija board bullshit. And they'll also state that you have a higher death rate if you get cancer treatment. Because if you don't get cancer treatment, you live longer? No, it's because when you're diagnosed with cancer, they try to treat it. It has a high death rate compared to not being diagnosed with cancer. Yes, basically what they're saying is if you're not diagnosed with cancer, we won't find out you died from cancer. There are people out there who sold fake cancer treatments, who died from cancer, and made it part of their will that nobody would do a biological check to make sure they didn't die from cancer. There are people who died from AIDS, literal AIDS, who are AIDS denialists, who put it in their fucking will that you wouldn't be able to do a pathology report on them. And you know what happened? Fucking with the medical community for several decades, like some of these people did, yeah, they did postmortems and found out, yeah, the person died from AIDS or the person died from a virus or died from cancer, and they never were able to treat themselves. They were not able to cure themselves. So completely create another conspiracy theory. But why would they do that? Because they made a shit ton of money not treating medical problems and basically fucking over people who could have gotten medical treatment and delayed them getting medical treatment, and some of these assholes have been jailed for it. The motivations are always money. Well, not always. Some of them are denialists. Anti-vaccine people, because vaccines are almost exclusively used against viruses, have to deny viruses exist eventually. Because viruses have a long history. We've known about them for a while, we just didn't know what they really were. So in order to combat a fucking mountain of reality, you have to put up a molehill of your own pooping and say, that's bigger, because homeopathy means anything tiny is big, anything big is small. So much winning. Total landslide. Losing by 7 million votes now, is it this week, Trump? Yes, it's a particular personality type that gravitates towards someone saying something that's the polar opposite of reality for whatever reason. And money is usually involved. But why would somebody claim that vaccines don't work? Because they've become so obsessed with consent to get vaccinated that they've ignored whether or not vaccines even work. They are hell-bent, literally, on everybody being fucked over. And a large number of them got vaccinated and won't admit it. Then they'll say people who absolutely got vaccinated didn't get vaccinated. They just say everything the opposite of reality and keep doing this. And it is a money motivation, because a lot of anti-vaxxers have GoFundMes because they're railing against Goliath of Big Pharma. You know, Big Pharma that has to show that it's safe and effective. Not safe and ineffective, like water. Yes, homeopathy is based on drinking water, or alcohol in some cases, or some other thing that's mixed so finely that you don't have any real material in it other than the filler material. It's the ultimate scam. They sell you sugar pills and say, well, we cut it 1,000,000 times to 1. It's got to have virtually nothing in it, or it won't be massively effective, because that's fucking cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Ironically, they reused the vaccination technique as their methodology. Yes, they did. I have one question. How do HIV denialists profit from stating that the multi-trillion-dollar drug pharma industry is wrong? They don't profit from saying that they're wrong. They say that they're lying. And they profit by providing you medications that don't do a goddamn thing and making sure you drop dead, because they all suspect that if you have AIDS, you're gay and they want you to die. Oh, you thought it'd be a different answer? No, it literally is, fuck you, go die somewhere. It's the same shit it always has been. Always will be. And no, it's not both sides. It's that side, and they're not the right end of the spectrum. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that.